So, the news dropped, and it was a big one for the NBA world. After 6 seasons, Billy Donovan is out as head coach of the Chicago Bulls. But, this isn't your typical firing. Not at all. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite. And the real story here is way more interesting than you'd think.
And right there, that's the big puzzle, isn't it? The Bulls came out and said they wanted Donovan to stay. Heck, they basically told him he could stick around as long as he wanted. So, why is he gone? Well, to figure that out, we gotta rewind the clock a little and look at the chaos that came first.
You see, to really get what happened with Donovan, you have to understand that this move didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was actually the final domino to fall in a complete and total teardown of the Bulls' entire leadership structure. It was a sign that the franchise was ready for a radical change. And just look at how fast this all went down. On April 6th, the Bulls basically clean house, firing their top 2 basketball execs. Then, just a couple of weeks later, after some long talks with the owners, Donovan himself steps down. This wasn't some slow, drawn-out process. No, this was like hitting the emergency reset button on the entire franchise. Okay, so that brings us back to the big question we started with. This wasn't a firing. It wasn't some bitter breakup. It was a mutual agreement, a really strategic decision that was designed to give the Chicago Bulls a completely fresh start. And if you look at what Donovan himself said, it's pretty darn clear. He's stepping aside so that the next person in charge, the new head of basketball operations, can have total freedom. He didn't want the new boss to feel like they had to keep him or to be stuck building a team around a coach they didn't personally pick. And this right here, this shows you just how much respect there was on both sides. The Bulls owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, praises Donovan's character, saying he put the team first. It paints this picture of a coach who, even though the team wanted him, chose what was best for the organization's future over his own job. So here's the bottom line. Billy Donovan left so that the new front office could walk in the door with a completely blank canvas. No strings attached, no inherited staff, and this is a much bigger deal than it sounds. In the NBA, a new exec often has to work with a coach they didn't hire, which can cause all sorts of friction and drama. Donovan's move just cuts all of that out, giving the next leader total, unfiltered power to rebuild the Bulls however they see fit. And let me tell you, getting a totally clean slate like that, that's gold in the NBA. It almost never happens. But you might be asking, why did they need such a dramatic, full-on reset in the first place? Well, for that, we have to look at what actually happened on the court while Donovan was in Chicago. And it tells a very different story than the first part of his NBA career. And wow, when you put his 2 coaching stints side by side, the difference is, well, it's pretty shocking. With OKC, Donovan was in the playoffs every single year, 5 for 5. But with Chicago, in 6 whole seasons, he had a losing record and the team just couldn't find any real consistent success. It wasn't just a small dip, it was a completely different story. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to this one number. Just one. In 6 years, a legendary franchise like the Chicago Bulls made the playoffs only once. For a team with 6 championships in its history, that kind of track record just wasn't going to cut it. It demanded a massive change in direction. All right, so the split is official. Both Billy Donovan and the Bulls are now moving on, heading down their own separate paths. And each one is facing a very different but equally critical future. For a guy like Billy Donovan, we're talking a Hall of Famer here. The next steps are pretty straightforward. He's going to keep coaching, and you can bet he'll be a top candidate for any team looking for a new coach. But for the Bulls, their task is way bigger. They have to find the right executive to lead this new era and prove that this whole reset was worth it. And you better believe the Bulls are not sitting around. They've already gotten the green light to interview a really solid list of candidates. We're talking executives from successful organizations like the Timberwolves and the Spurs, and even a top agent from a powerhouse agency. The hunt is definitely on. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, the firings, Donovan stepping down, the hunt for a new boss, you realize what this really is. This is a massive, high-stakes gamble by the Chicago Bulls, and they're betting it all on a much brighter future. Which leaves us with the one big question that's going to hang over this franchise. By wiping the slate completely clean and giving a new leader total control, have the Bulls finally put themselves on the path back to winning? Or was this a drastic overreaction that could set them back even further? Well, I guess we're all going to find out.